My name's David Houston. I'm a third-generation small business owner with offices here in Shawnee, Kansas, a suburb of Kansas City, Des Moines, and Omaha. My question, it's partly a statement, but also a question. I said I'm very, very frustrated during the past year when I see billions and billions of dollars sent to large financial institutions, kind of what we were alluding to before. I'm especially upset when I hear the phrase, and you use this, quote, "that company is too big to fail." As a small business person, that's very hard to swallow. I feel like a more accurate statement of policy would be too big to fail, too small to save. My business and thousands of others fall into that too small to save category. Small businesses employ more people than the Fortune 500 companies combined. Small businesses represent the lifeblood of small cities, large cities, and our American economy. Innovation and creativity is coming from small businesses. But I truly believe small business and the companies that support small business are getting shortchanged by the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department, and Congress. Am I wrong on that perception?
It's a great question, a tough question, but a great question. Let me go first back to too big to fail. And let me just emphasize that nothing made me more frustrated, more angry, than having to intervene, particularly in a couple of cases where taking wild bets had forced these companies close to bankruptcy. There's nothing made me angrier than having to do that. Why do we do it? Because if that company had collapsed in the middle of a crisis, it could have brought everything down. In 1929, people think the Depression was created by the stock market crash. It wasn't. From 1929 to 1931, it was a normal recession. Then in 1931, a huge bank in the middle of Central Europe collapsed, and that created a global financial crisis, which then made the recession into a Great Depression. I was not going to be the Federal Reserve Chairman who presided over the Second Great Depression. And for that reason, I had to hold my nose and stop those firms from failing. I am as disgusted about it as you are. And I think it's absolutely critical as we go forward that we put in a new system that will make sure that when a firm does not succeed in the marketplace, that it fails. That is absolutely critical, and I support that 100%. Now, on small business, I also agree with you. Small business is where the jobs come from, it's where the innovation comes from, it's where the creativity and entrepreneurship in America comes from. Every big company was once a small company. And so we really have to preserve and protect and strengthen small business. And I'm fully aware of those issues. We hear all the time about the credit issues for small business. We're doing what we can, as I mentioned, our program to get small business loans out. We're working with the banks, encouraging them to make loans. I understand your frustration. I absolutely understand your frustration. And we're working really hard to try to make it better.
Mr. Chairman, as I'm sure you know, there were competing pieces in the Sunday New York Times op-ed section on the question of whether you deserve another term as chairman. And the negative piece was written by Ann Jacobson Schwartz. She's an economist from the National Bureau of Economic Research. I'm aware that you know her. But let me just read you what she said, which relates to this particular question that we're talking about here, is the storm and how the Fed reacted. Quote, "The Fed delivered plenty of rhetoric about the importance of transparency, yet failed to articulate its own goals. The market was thus bewildered when the Fed rescued certain firms and not others. Mr. Bernanke should have explained the principles behind these decisions. The market could not understand why the Fed rescued Bear Stearns and then permitted Lehman Brothers to die. As a consequence, there was volatility in the credit and equity markets and a general sense of turmoil that demonstrated that participants were at a loss to understand the functioning of the Fed." Your comment, sir.
My comment is that we tried to save all these big companies because we knew the implications. We tried to save Lehman Brothers. The problem is, as I was discussing before, is that we don't have a system, we don't have a structure. All these problems that she was alluding to occurred before even that Congress passed this TARP legislation that created the $700 billion to support failing companies. So we didn't have any tools. In the case of Bear Stearns and in the case of AIG, by using the Fed's lending authority and other devices, we jerry-rigged up a way of preventing the failure of those firms. In the case of Lehman Brothers, there was just a huge $40-50 billion hole that we had no way to fill, and no money, no authorization, no way to do it. So we had to let it fail. We had no choice. So I regret that it happened, because it created a huge amount of difficulty, and in fact it just confirms what I've been saying, that if you allow a big financial firm to collapse in the middle of a financial crisis, the consequences for the average person, for the global economy, are severe. What Ms. Schwartz wanted us to do was to state in advance what our strategy was for saving firms. We had no idea which firm was going to fail, and we didn't have a system, we didn't have a structure. And what I'm saying is, going forward, we need to have what we now have for banks, but don't have for other kinds of financial firms. We need to have a law, a set of laws that allows the government to come in and systematically and in a transparent way wind down a failing financial behemoth, to use the word that was used before, so that it doesn't create damage throughout the system. So her premise is that we made a conscious decision to let Lehman fail. We did not. We spent the entire weekend with basically 24 hours a day trying to do everything we could to save that company, not again because we thought it was deserving, but because we knew what the implications were going to be. We didn't have the tools to do it. The other companies that were thinking about buying it decided not to buy